welcome back to Market Shares. I'm your host, Tony Blodgett, and today we're going to talk about something that is one of the most annoying things that we all deal with in the mortgage industry, and that is trigger leads. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, trigger leads are where our credit bureaus, believe it or not, Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, are allowed to sell leads to lenders when somebody has their credit pulled for a similar type of product. So for instance, you apply for a mortgage or a home loan, you have your credit report pulled, they will sell that information. Believe it or not, this is legal currently. They sell that information to a number of different lenders, and all of a sudden your phone blows up with people reaching out, trying to solicit your business. These are called trigger leads. And it's something that our industry has been complaining about for a very long time. But also our consumers are complaining about it. It's a challenge for homeowners. Their phone will literally ring off the hook for days after they have their credit report pulled. And it's such a nuisance for borrowers. We've heard this multiple times. So, us, like many companies, are working with their borrowers to try to curb the impact of these trigger leads, right? There's some things that you can do. First of all, if you pull a soft credit pull, that will not trigger a trigger lead to go out. So that's one tactic that we've been using as an industry. But also you can have your borrower opt out and help them submit their opt out paperwork online. But it takes, 4 or 5 days. And so if you're in a hurry to get their credit report pulled, that might not work as well. But there's definitely some things that we've been trying to do to mitigate this challenge. But there's good news on the horizon. There has been legislation proposed that would ban the use of trigger leads. This is HR 2808. The good news is that we've seen similar regulations like this recently get passed with the current Congress that we have. So it's looking like we could see this HR 2808 go into effect this year in 2025. We could see trigger leads go away. Now, the good news is there is some provisions within this proposed rule that would give some exceptions, right? So the current mortgage servicer, they could still get notified if someone was looking to refinance their loan. The originator who did the original loan could still get those leads, and any banks that might have a depository relationship with that customer. And to be honest with you, a little bit of notification, might be helpful to a consumer, if I'm being honest, right? Because we all know that clients should shop around. They should, definitely get their, best advice possible when they're looking to take down a major transaction like a mortgage. But to get 50, 100 calls just because you had your credit report pulled is absolutely abusive and absurd. So I'm really excited to hear that after much, frustration from our customers, from our industry, that this is finally something that looks like it could go into effect here in 2025. Now, the big blow is going to come to the credit bureaus, right? Now, if you're in the mortgage industry and you're paying attention, there's been significant increases in the cost of credit reports over the last couple of years. And this is directly proposed by the credit bureaus, the ones that we get the information from. Now, many of us use a credit report vendor, but these charges, that it's not being charged by them in most cases. I mean, they certainly have their margin built in there for the service that they provide to produce our tri-merge credit reports and the customer service that goes with that and all the things you would expect. But the majority of this expense is coming from the credit bureaus themselves. And that is despite the amount of revenue that they've been making off of these trigger leads. I mean, it's reported that Experian makes millions of dollars a year selling these trigger leads. And I would assume it's the same for the other two bureaus as well. So to me, this kind of begs the question, how are they going to replace that revenue? Are we going to see further increases to the cost of credit reports? I mean, like, is that even sustainable? They're already so high right now. We've seen probably a 50% increase in the cost of credit reports recently. And I wouldn't be surprised if, this move has some impact on the cost of credit reports. Now, that is not being reported right now, but it just seems logical to me that if these bureaus miss out on all of this revenue, they're going to have to try to find a way to make up for it, I would think. So I think it's still very good news to get rid of the trigger leads and all the gymnastics that we do to try to avoid our borrowers from being subjected to that. But as with everything, there may be some unintended consequences. We'll just have to see. But like I said, similar bills like this have gone right through the Senate. And so it's expected that this one will do the same. So it's looking very promising on trigger leads potentially going away. Now, as many of you may know, their Housing Wire has their annual summit right now. And it's called The Gathering, and there's been, I did not attend the event, although I really wanted to, so hopefully next year I will put that on my calendar. But one thing that came out of that I wanted to just touch on really quick, because I've done some episodes about FHFA, Fannie Freddie, conservatorship. Matter of fact, if you didn't watch the episode I did with Ryan Hills, go back and watch that. We have a little, debate style back and forth conversation about it. But there was a few things that have come to light since then, because this is one of those kind of developing stories, if you will, about Fannie and Freddie and their conservatorship. So I just wanted to let you know what Bob Brokesmith said. He is the president and CEO of the MBA, and he spoke on stage at the gathering. And what he had said is that, this Fannie and Freddie coming out of conservatorship thing is probably not a 2025 issue. And, I get it. There's a lot of stuff that the current administration is dealing with when you think about tariffs, when you think about, all the other deregulation stuff that they're working on. Sounds like this may not be super high on the agenda, although it's definitely in the queue and something that I think will continue to be talked about, but probably not likely here in 2025. But one other thing that he pointed out that I had not really heard before, and I think is relevant here, is that as of right now, as of the current requirements, the current regulations for capital requirements, Fannie and Freddie would not have enough capital on hand to completely come out of conservatorship. And so what would need to happen is either some time needs to pass where they can build up those reserves, or we would need to see a change in the regulations around, reserve capital requirements and things of that nature. And it's not expected that the Trump administration is going to make any changes there. It seems very unlikely. So that alone could delay this happening. Now, one other thing I want to mention about this topic, and actually this conversation happened the same day I was recording that episode with Ryan Hills, so I didn't have it, but I was on a call with Barry Habib with MBS Highway, and one of the things that he was talking about, and I think he had actually talked to someone in the Trump administration, I forget who it was, maybe it was Scott Bessent, maybe it was Pulte, or somebody that he had a conversation with about Fannie and Freddie, and they said one proposal that isn't really being talked about, but is definitely an option is, right now we have Fannie and Freddie in conservatorship. They're under the FHFA. They're essentially ran by the government, right? So we say, well, the other option is for them just to go back to being public companies, right? Just publicly traded companies, publicly ran companies. Of course, they would still need their securities to have the backing of the federal government. So it would be more similar to the way things were prior to, say 2008 during the big meltdown. There would still be this, guarantee of the mortgage-backed securities, giving them the ability to be a very low-risk investment for investors. But one other idea that Barry said is being talked about, which I thought was interesting, is the idea of not necessarily keeping them under conservatorship, but keeping the majority of the stock owned by the government. So still allowing them to become public companies, but with the government being the primary benefactor of the, success of Fannie and Freddie, right? So it would kind of be a hybrid situation where, yeah, they're public, but we retain a large ownership of that stock, allowing it to raise additional capital, to have the other benefits of a publicly traded company, but still let our taxpayers, and this was kind of my argument in that last episode, is the taxpayers bailed out Fannie and Freddie, which was necessary, in my opinion, and you could not have let Fannie and Freddie collapse back in 2008. But nonetheless, we gave them kind of that hard money loan, if you will, and we should benefit. The taxpayers should benefit, in my opinion, from any future revenue or profits that are generated by those agencies, because essentially they were failed agencies. They needed to be taken over by the government. The government is funded by our tax dollars. In my opinion, we should be able to continue to benefit from that for years to come. Ryan made some good points in that episode about, are all those funds, that the profits being, used the way that they should, to further promote Fannie, Freddie, and the housing industry? I mean, that I don't know. But definitely a good question. But nonetheless, I thought this was just an interesting tag on that I wanted to plop into this episode as we continue to watch what's happening here with Fannie and Freddie, because it's such big news, but it sounds to me like this is going to be maybe a 2026, maybe even a 2027 kind of a conversation. Probably not something we need to worry too much about as we move through the second half of 2025. So you guys, that's my update for today. Trigger leads, huge. This is a huge topic, and I'm really excited for our borrowers and our industry to see that this may be going away. I'm glad to see some carve outs for the loan originator who originally did that loan, for banks that they have actual relationships with, and for the servicer. I think that was an important call out. Looks like that's being taken care of. But what'll be the impact? What'll be the fallout? How will the credit bureaus make up that revenue if this goes away? That is something we're definitely going to want to keep our eyes on. So you guys, like always, I want to thank you for your time in watching this episode. But more than that, I want to ask you to do me a favor and share this with someone in our industry, in the mortgage and real estate industry. We are really looking in the second half of 2025 to grow the Market Shares channel. And the more people that get an opportunity to absorb and take in our content, the better off we are. And I sure appreciate it. For those of you who are subscribers and watch every single week, thank you. And as you guys know, and I'll let everyone else know, we drop a new episode every single Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Make sure that you subscribe and set your notifications so that you get notified every time a new episode of Market Shares drops. And until then, take care.